Hello everybody, what's your game plan for 2023? For me, after thinking about it through the Christmas period, my conclusion is that I'll prep my war chest and quite importantly, next year I wouldn't be doing DCAs, so regular injections of capital. I'll just wait because I think there's going to be a blow up. So let me talk about it, why there's going to be a blow up. There are five main geopolitical movements next year, I think. First of all, of course, most importantly is the Russia-Ukraine crisis. I don't know what's going to happen though. It looks like a never-ending saga, right? Because now you see Putin is trying to kind of end this thing, but the West, quite funnily, is it seems to be the one that doesn't want to stop it. It just want to continue escalating, right? So this crisis, I don't know what's gonna happen. It seems like it's gonna drag on for quite a while more. And the inflation repercussions and implications, and the for food prices, fertilizer prices, and so on and so forth. It's just a very unknown, right? But for the rest of this video, let's just assume that things remain status quo. No escalation, no de-escalation, no ultimate usage of nuclear weapons. Because if any of those happens, we're gonna have a ultimate dump off in risk assets. I think the U.S. situation is quite clear. The Fed is nearing the end of the hiking cycle, and there's gonna be a recession, maybe late next year. I think the Euro region recession is quite for sure. It's gonna be a hard one. I think the combination of a recession plus a hawkish ECB is gonna lead to instability in the eurozone. Maybe you see a repeat of a 2011 Euro crisis, right, where the countries in the peripheral, the PIGS country, right, see another blow up in their sovereign debt. So maybe this is gonna lead to a sovereign debt crisis. China is the most surprising of all, right? You think with 3 years of preparation time for a COVID reopening, they'll do better. But you see, you just reopen surprisingly a big bang, right? And then you have millions of infections and thousands of deaths already. Really surprising, right? Because you think that if they lock themselves out for 3 years, they will exit with better consequences, right? So if the consequence is ultimately the same as everybody in the whole world, meaning millions of infections and thousands of deaths, then why do you want to even lock down for 3 years in the first place? So you can avoid the economic damage for getting the same outcome, right? So I'm really surprised that the Chinese government hasn't handled this a lot better. But I can see from the experiences in Singapore and the rest of the world, this is not just gonna end like that. You're gonna have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 waves of the COVID infections, and the reopening in China is gonna be a stop-start, right? So I don't know how this gonna play out, but I'm really surprised that the Chinese government hasn't handled this better. But ultimately, this is ultimately a reopening thing, and we are generally gonna re-normalize after a very very difficult stop-start waves. And finally, we have the a surprise from BOJ, right? In the last weeks of 2022 from Kuroda, I think the move to widen the 10-year JGB volatility trading band from 25 basis points to 50 basis points is signaling an exit from the yield curve control. Especially if you look at it, right? Kuroda's term is going to end in April 23, so there's going to be a new governor, and I think they will take the opportunity now that the CPI in Japan is 3.7%, so well above 2% target, to signal an exit from the yield curve control and the ultra easy monetary policy, because the collapse in the yen to 30-year lows is not welcome for the population, right? So they have to do something, and I think ultimately we have a hawkish BOJ as well. So this is gonna have huge implications for the rest of the world, right? With all the monies from Japan all exiting the risk assets and repatriating back to Japan. So I think this is the timeline of what's going to happen in 2023. The Fed is going to hike from current 4.25 to 4.5%. They're going to hike to 4.75 to 5%, so 50 basis points in the next meeting, I think. Another 25 basis points separately, subsequently, I mean, to 5 to 5.15%. So this takes the median projection to a 5.1%, right, which is what they signaled in the latest FOMC minutes. And I think after that, they'll pause. I think in the meantime, the core PC plus the CPI numbers will just start to continue to trend downwards. And it's quite clear right now the effects of the high interest rates on mortgage and housing activities is kicking in, and the goods deflation is kicking in, offsetting by the service inflation. I think the these measures are gonna just gonna trend downwards, and by this stage, you're gonna have the core PCE numbers below the Fed funds rate and now we are now in a very restrictive monetary policy regions, and therefore the Fed will just hold for the rest of the period. What's going to happen next is that the ECB will hike and BOJ will guide for the exit to the monetary easy monetary policy they have in the past. So therefore, continued rate hawkishness in Europe and Japan, and therefore the US dollar will start to fall. The falling dollar will mean imported inflation picks up, and therefore you have inflation starting to rise again on top of the rising service inflation, right? So inflation is gonna kick up again. Whether or not it ends up above the Fed funds rate is difficult to say because it then depends on the recession versus China's reopening. We're gonna have a recession in the Europe for sure over here, and then you have a recession in the US happening end of 2023. So this is going to have a disinflationary effect on inflation. But you have China reopening, right? And if they reopen, they're going to have a big demand for oil and commodities, and that's going to have a offsetting effect in terms of inflation. So whether or not this rising inflation over here is going to be above the Fed funds rate really depends on these two factors, right? Is this going to offset this one, or is this going to overwhelm this one? I don't know, man. Because as we've seen just now, right, the China reopening is not going to be straightforward. It's going to be like 4, 5, 6, 7 waves of infection. It's going to be a stop-start. So I'm not very sure how this is going to play out, though. But I think ultimately the Fed will just continue to hold all the way to the end of 23, maybe with a slight softening in the end of 23. You know why? Because in 2024 there's going to be a US elections, and there's no way the Fed governors can raise rates by then. Because if you want to keep your job after the elections, you better make sure that you cut rates, right? You at the very least you don't raise rates, right? So I think they're gonna hold it to maybe the end of 23, and then in 24, it's gonna be rate cuts already. But of course, all of this is contingent on what you said just now, meaning the Russia-Ukraine crisis, right? If the Russia decides to go nuclear, boom, all bets are off, man. All this stuff are off, and we're gonna have a big number of risk assets. I think in risk assets, right, we're gonna have optimism over here, especially now that we're nearing the tail end, and we see the inflation stop receding. But then after here, you have so much geopolitical tensions and black swan events happening around here, right? The ECB hikes, the BOJ hikes, recession fears, and then Europe instability, China reopening pressures, and all of this, right? Any single one of them is capable of sending risk assets to a tailspin, and I think this is a big opportunity to just throw all your bullets and just buy up the panic and the margin calls and the panic sellings that are going to happen. So that's my conclusion actually. I'll accumulate my war chest and wait for a big opportunity over here to just snap up everything. So this is what I think of 2023. So to all viewers, let's have a hot 2023.